Remember to subscribe for daily top Reddit stories. Okay, story time. Teachers of Reddit, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? A kid's apartment burned down overnight. He was a little late, but still came. Told me he got pulled over by the cops for wobbly driving on his bike and they thought he was drunk. Turned out he was just dodging all the slugs on the street. One of my organ students told me he was late arriving for his lesson because he got stuck behind a lengthy funeral procession en route to the cemetery. I knew he was telling the truth because I had played the organ for the service earlier that morning and the church was packed. This happened to me as a pupil. A very quiet, unassuming kid in our class came into German with about 5 minutes of the class left. We went to a Catholic school and the teachers were all quite strict and intimidating. Classes were usually silent, especially in junior school. When this boy came into class at the end of the lesson that day, the door flew inwards with such force that the teacher gave an audible gasp. It had been raining heavily outside. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His blazer was dripping and sodden. He had mud caked into his trousers up to his knees, and he was breathing heavily. The teacher exclaimed, "Brendan, what happened?" We all stared up at him in shocked silence. This quiet, unassuming little boy let out a big sigh and just said, "I took a shortcut," and went straight to his seat. That line became iconic in our school for years afterwards. In my hometown, if you walked into anywhere late and said the phrase "sorry, grain train," you were never challenged. It was extremely common for 50+ carriage trains to run through the middle of town. Not me, but in my class. This was in college. Student turned in work late after not showing up for 2 classes. 2 classes amounted to a full week, so it was noticeable. Professor looked at him and said, "I hope somebody died for you to be this late. Does my dad count?" Honestly, I've always heard you can hear a pin drop and never really thought anything of it. But yeah, you could hear a ducking pin cut through the air after that. A kid missed my first period class one morning, but was in school later that day. When I asked him why he hadn't arrived in time for my course, he said his cow was birthing its calf that morning, so he'd picked being in the barn over English. Made sense to me. His essays weren't going to win any ribbons at the county fair, but his calf could. We had an exam in my class and the teacher got a message from a student saying that he was going to be late because his car had a flat tire. The student was known to party. The teacher didn't think it could be true, so as a joke the teacher asked him to bring the tire back. He brought the flat tire back in the middle of the exam. Needless to say, the professor didn't expect that. UK, a student couldn't submit an assignment on time as the Wi-Fi was down on the megabus. Edit. Cheers for all the love, and I'll be sure to tell the student his megabus mishap is relatable across the globe. When I was in college, my psych professor told us that the only excuse for being late was a funeral procession. Any other reason, you wouldn't be allowed to come in. A few weeks into the semester, I was headed from one building to another, which involved crossing the main road. Lo and behold, there was one very long funeral procession going by. I got a short video of it as proof, then stood on the sidewalk to let it go by. Unfortunately, the procession made me 5 minutes late to class. I knocked on the door, and the professor came over to start to tell me off. I showed her the video. Well, I'll be damned. Come on in. I had a teacher who showed up about halfway through the class. Apparently her car had slid. Intense snowstorm the night before, and she had walked the last mile or so. MTV paid me $50 to fill my backpack with cement and carry it around for the day. I accepted that excuse. Student later regretted it, as a replacement backpack and college textbooks far exceeded $50. But he got his moment of fame and I didn't penalize him for his tardy. Gotta live a little. Edit. Someone found a newspaper article on this. Turns out it was $200. He earned $100 for the first day and $100 when he returned the next day. I remembered $50, but it was 19 years ago, so I was right to believe him. He still lost all his stuff, thanks cement, and I remember him telling me it wasn't worth it. And edit. Typo. I had a 6-year-old turn up late to her lesson and blurt out, "Sorry I was late. I had to color in a bunny." Seems fair. She had to take her sister to school and drive her mom to rehab. She was always late to class because her mom just wanted to sleep in. Problem was, if the mom was late or did not go, she would have violated her probation and gone to prison. I never marked her late. If she missed anything important, she could come in at lunch or after school to make it up. My best friend and I used to roller skate to school, and one day we both forgot to put our shoes in our backpacks. So we skated to the vice principal's office and got to skip first period to go home for shoes. We stopped at Taco Bell on the way back for breakfast because we figured we were already excused. I was the student. My neighbor had a really social goat, and she figured out how to escape her pen in order to come over and hang out. She escaped and followed me to the bus stop, and when the bus came, she tried to follow me onto it. I couldn't actually get on the bus without her being right behind me, so I had to get off, bring her home, and call my dad to bring me to school. I was one of about 20 kids who were late to school. We showed up at the school office as a group, and when questioned why we were late, we said the school bus blew up. They questioned, so the engine blew up. The kids know, the whole bus, in flames. It blew up. There was much conference between the teachers, all of them thinking we embellished the story. Next thing you know, one of the admin staff has the news website open. Very obvious image of an entire bus on fire with a bunch of kids in our school uniform standing in front of it. Our late slip for class reads school bus blew up. Not a teacher but a friend said his house blew away. Apparently, tornado. After 9/11, my small town high school received bomb threats every week for 2 months, and they decided to make us attend school on a Saturday. Myself and about 5 others showed up for our classes, and every teacher said something like, "I can't wait for the excuses on Monday." Most of the excuses were something along the lines of family plans or whatnot, but one kid was made read his dad's note aloud to the class because our first period teacher thought it was hilarious. In the most down south accent you can imagine. It went something like, "My son ain't too smart, but he knows you ain't supposed to get punished for someone else being a dumbass. Bought him a 6-pack, so he was drunk. You all can duck off." I wish we had smartphones to record back then so I could share it. Literally today, child missed my first hour class. Note said car accident on the way to school and would be coming late. Kid comes for second hour. Has pictures on his phone of the rollover accident. WTF. Kid, go home. Rest. Take care of yourself. Edit. I have another one. Although this one happened to a classmate when we were in college training to be teachers. She missed a really important class. Came for just the last 10 minutes or so because her neighbor knocked on her door while in active labor asking for help a little while before she was supposed to leave for class. Classmate walked back to neighbor's house with prego neighbor and delivered her baby in the living room while on the phone to 911. Paramedics came and mom and baby were fine, but classmate needed to go home and shower change first because she was covered in blood. Not a student, but one of my teaching assistants when I ran a preschool in West Philly. "Sorry I missed yesterday. My friend shot my mom." Naturally, I'm a little speechless. "Oh no, it's okay. He was aiming for someone else." My car got hit by lightning. It did. In the school parking lot. Her tires were melted to the pavement. She had to go out and deal with the tow truck, call her parents, etc. It was pretty dramatic. I was the student. When I was in college, I opened my front door to CSWAT, teams and D agents outside of my house. The one who looked at me was holding some kind of AR. I went back inside. From what I heard, there was a multiple sting operation that happened around my town and my neighbor's place got raided. I missed half of my classes that day. Not me, but one of my good friends. She went to the Royal Military College of Canada, where they wear their uniforms and there are often tourists visiting the campus. Apparently, it was completely normal to be waylaid by tourists looking to have their photos taken with students in uniform that all they had to say when they walked in late was tourists and the professors would let it slide. She always wondered how many family photos she was actually in over her time spent there. A guy in my college class missed class one day. The next day he came in with his eye covered up and medical paperwork in hand. Apparently he got pecked in the eye by a chicken. Me. My bus hit a bird and the whole windshield was cracked. We had to wait for another bus to pick us up. I'm pink. A fair-skinned student, age 10, went with a friend to the holy festival at a nearby Hindu temple where she was covered with red powder and dyed bright red from head to toe. Her mother, another teacher at the school, had made her sit for hours in the bathtub to soak it off, but even after another round of early morning shower scrubbing, she arrived at school a pleasant shade of pink. Technically, she wasn't late, but she stayed in her mother's classroom until the bell rang. When I was student teaching, I was late because there was bunch chickens in the middle of the road. They wouldn't move at all. This is in the middle of a city of 200,000 people. Freaking chickens. I finally get to school and profusely apologized to my mentor teacher, and I told her why I was late, thinking it sounded ridiculous. She said, "Yeah, those chickens are ducking assholes. They surrounded my car in the McDonald's parking lot last year. Don't worry about it." Edit. Thanks for the awards but not necessary. I didn't think this would even be read by more than a few. Student told me he couldn't do the work because he was delivering oil from 3 PM until 11 PM. In middle school. He wasn't lying. Dad has broken his both of shoulders and one clavicle, so his grandma and pregnant mom were switching off driving. Pretty sure he was doing most of it at night, and he was hooking the tanks to the oil. I called all his teachers and had his workload lightened and got permission for him to come in an hour late each day, as he was providing the only income for his family of 8. As he was the oldest, tutored him so he could pass 7th grade. I paid cost of oil only for years until I moved out of the area. This was me as a student. My parents thought I get President's Day off, so they didn't wake me up. Flock of wild turkeys in the road. Not always school, but this happened more than once in my life. For those of you who have never found yourselves in this situation, there is no way out of it. Wild turkeys will move when they damn well decide to do so, and only then. In high school I biked to class. One day I hit a rock and ate absolute shit. I obviously got to class late. Before I could say a word, my teacher stopped class and said, "Thank you for finally joining us. Why are you so late?" I raised my heavily bloodied hands and elbows. It must have looked bad because she audibly gasped and rushed me to the school nurse, apologizing non-stop the entire way. Not school, but I got robbed at gunpoint and my car stolen the previous night and was talking to cops detectives until the early hours of the morning. But being the dedicated corporate slave I am, I showed up to work the next day, albeit an hour or so late. Even in public accounting they understood and even said, "You know, this is clearly an appropriate reason to not come into work, right?" Looking back, I probably should have taken that day off. If anything, this made my co-workers think I'm some crazy person for just brushing the whole incident off as no big deal and coming into work. Bear on the backyard. No access gate. Animal control had to trank it from the room and drag it through the house. Made the news. Got to retake the test I missed after sending her the news article. I had a chemistry professor show up about 15 minutes late, just when people were about to leave. He shows up and explains that he was just in a car accident. His car had been in a rollover and he still showed up. He said he was okay. He drove a Volvo. Student here. I headed into school early to get some studying done in the library before my night class. I was one exit away when I was caught in a 3-car accident. Most of the expressway afterwards was gridlock with only one lane left open. I did eventually make it into my lab class 15 minutes late, with a few scrapes and bruises. My professor's reaction was simply, "Oh, that was you." Not a teacher, but I was training a new hire at a job and the guy came in 45 minutes late, stating he got halfway to work and realized he didn't have shoes on. It was winter and like 15 degrees outside. Me. My car froze shut. We had an ice storm and this was before the fancy power locks and keyless entry were a thing. Obligatory, not a teacher, but I'm an admin at a music school. I had a mom frantically call me and let me know her daughter would probably be late or miss their guitar lesson in a couple hours cause she couldn't find the kid. I was just kind of like, "Ah, okay, well, I will let her teacher know." Got another call about an hour later from the same mom. She found her kid, but apparently the daughter went to her friend's house and decided to dye her hair green. They lived pretty closely, so I did let them know they could still come in for their lesson. Mom said she would call me back and let me know in a minute or two. Never called back. Her daughter showed up for her lesson about 5 minutes late with this bright green coiffure. I gotta admit it looked rad as duck, but also kind of a confusing thing to be an audience to the build-up. School sporting event. Kid on our team was late because someone stole his windshield wipers and it was snowing out. Kept having to pull over to the side of the road and wipe off his windshield. I was the student. I was walking to school and 2 of our cats were following me. I had to round them up and take them home. My dad wrote me a note for my lateness, which included the phrase animal show and tell day. Sorry, Bohemian Rhapsody came on just as I parked. My art teacher when he was about 55 minutes late. I had a student whose father had died and had not done any homework or prep for the geography class. From what I heard, the teacher scolded him for not doing so, but the student didn't want to say anything, presumably sensitive issue. So his best friend shouted at the teacher, "Don't you have any shame? His father died last night," and the teacher said, "I don't care." There was an audible gasp and I was in the next room. Needless to say, that teacher is no longer employed here. Not a teacher, but I was hit by a car on my bike to uni and my professor was more than understanding as to why I was late. I'm not the teacher, but we were told that he had a paramedic student who on their way to write their final exam rolled their car into a creek, picked up whatever books they had out of their car and ran the rest of the way to class. Obviously got there late and in tears. You better believe they had a different exam date. A little off topic, but in 8th grade a friend of mine turned in a homework late because her dog literally ate her homework. She even brought a note from her parents. Not a teacher, but a kid walked into my class one day and literally just said, "Sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to be here." He wasn't wrong, I suppose. Thought it was Saturday. Shoot, I gotta study for finals. Thanks for listening. If I sparked joy, hit me with a like and subscribe. I make new videos every day. Till then, check out another video or leave a comment. I love you. Have a great day, you highly refined intelligent person.